Hello, my name is Mason Reed. I'm 23 years old, and I work as a steel worker in a mill in Youngstown, Ohio. It's not the kind of job that makes headlines, long shifts surrounded by fire, dust, and the constant clang of metal on metal. But it's steady, and after 4 years of grinding away, I finally saved enough for something big, a trip across the country. Nothing fancy, just a flight to Portland, Oregon, and some time to see the world beyond the factory walls. It was my reward to myself, the first real break I'd taken since high school. I'd never been on a plane before, and the thought of it had me buzzing with a mix of excitement and nerves for weeks. The day of the flight, I woke up before dawn, my stomach twisting in knots. I double-checked my backpack a dozen times: wallet, phone, a change of clothes, and the crumpled ticket I'd printed at the library. The drive to the airport in Cleveland was quiet, just me and my old pickup truck, the radio playing some country tune about open roads. As I parked and walked into the terminal, everything felt surreal. The crowds, the security lines, the smell of coffee and jet fuel, it was all new. My heart pounded as I went through the metal detector, half expecting them to stop me for looking too out of place in my faded jeans and work boots. "First time flying?" the TSA agent asked with a smirk when I fumbled with my belt. I nodded, feeling my face heat up. "You'll be fine, kid. Just follow the signs." By the time I boarded, my excitement was laced with real anxiety. The plane looked huge from the outside, but inside, the narrow aisle and rows of seats made me feel claustrophobic. I clutched my ticket stub like a lifeline, scanning the numbers overhead. 24B. There it was, a middle seat near the back. I squeezed past a couple of passengers, stowed my bag in the overhead bin, and sank into the seat. The cushion was firmer than I expected, and I fiddled with the seat belt, trying to figure out how tight it should be. Around me, people were settling in, business types on laptops, families with kids, everyone acting like this was no big deal. I leaned back, taking deep breaths, my mind racing. What if the plane shook? What if I got airsick? But underneath the worry, there was this thrill. I was actually doing it, leaving Ohio behind for the first time. I was staring out the window at the tarmac when a soft voice interrupted me. "Excuse me, I think you might be in my seat." I turned, and there she was, a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a simple blue dress that looked effortlessly put together, her dark hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She held her ticket out, smiling politely but firmly. My stomach dropped. I glanced at my own ticket, 24B, clear as day. "Oh, sorry," I muttered, fumbling to unbuckle. In my haste, I yanked too hard, tangling the belt around my arm, and as I stood, my headphone cord caught on the armrest, jerking me back. I reached up to steady myself and smacked my head on the open overhead bin with a thud that echoed through the cabin. A ripple of laughter spread from the nearby rows. I felt my cheeks burn, a wave of embarrassment crashing over me. The woman, Abigail, as I'd learn later, covered her mouth, her eyes crinkling with amusement, but not in a mean way. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice warm. I rubbed my head, forcing a grin. "Yeah, just first time on a plane. I'm a bit of a klutz." She nodded, stepping aside as I gathered my things, still chuckling softly. "No harm done. Happens to the best of us." I shuffled down the aisle, heart still racing from the mishap, checking my ticket again. 24C? No, wait, I'd misread it in my nervousness. It was 24 degrees Celsius all along. Mortified, I made my way back, only to realize the real seat was right next to her. She was already buckling in at 24B, and when I approached, she looked up and burst out laughing again. "Well, this is awkward," I said, sliding into 24C. "Looks like we're stuck together." She shook her head, her smile genuine now. "Fate has a sense of humor. I'm Abigail." I extended my hand. "Mason, nice to meet you, properly this time." As the plane taxied to the runway, the awkwardness faded a bit. The engines roared, and I gripped the armrest, my excitement turning back to anxiety as we lifted off. The ground fell away, and for a moment, I felt weightless, a mix of joy and fear bubbling up. Abigail noticed my white knuckles. "Nervous flyer?" she asked. I nodded. "First time, remember? Feels like I'm in one of those factory machines, but way higher up." She leaned back, relaxed. "You'll get used to it. Just breathe." We exchanged a few more words about the weather, the flight duration, and I found myself relaxing. She had this calm presence, like she'd seen it all before. The flight attendants came by with drinks, and I ordered a soda, still buzzing from the takeoff. Abigail got coffee, and as we sipped, I stole glances at her. She seemed tired but composed, flipping through a magazine. Part of me wanted to keep talking, but I didn't want to bother her. After all, she was probably just being polite to the idiot who'd stolen her seat. Still, as the plane leveled out and the seatbelt sign dinged off, I couldn't shake the feeling that this random encounter was already the highlight of my trip. Little did I know, it was just the beginning. As the plane leveled out at cruising altitude, I glanced over at Abigail again. She was staring out the window, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest. The awkwardness from my seat mix-up had faded, but I still felt a bit on edge. First flight jitters mixed with the strangeness of sitting next to someone who seemed so put together compared to me. The cabin was quiet now, save for the hum of the engines and the occasional ding from the flight attendants. I figured she'd pull out a book or headphones, signaling the end of our brief chat, but she didn't. Instead, she turned slightly toward me and asked, "So, Mason, what brings you to Portland? Business or pleasure?" I shifted in my seat, surprised she wanted to keep talking. "Pleasure, I guess. First real vacation I've taken. Been saving up for it." I didn't mention the factory grind or how this trip felt like a lifeline after years of the same routine. She nodded, her expression softening. "Sounds nice. I'm heading there too, part of a longer road trip across the country. Needed a change of scenery." There was something in her voice, a hint of weariness, like she was carrying more than just her carry-on. Before I could respond, the plane hit a pocket of turbulence. It wasn't bad, just a few shakes, but Abigail's hand gripped the armrest tighter, her knuckles whitening. I noticed her breath quicken, and without thinking, I leaned over a bit. "Hey, it's okay. These things are built tough. The fuselage and wings? Made from high-strength alloys I've worked with back at the mill. They can handle way more than this." She looked at me, her eyes wide for a second, then relaxed a fraction. "You sound like you know what you're talking about." I shrugged, feeling a bit more confident. "Yeah, I've been around heavy machinery my whole life. The vibrations in the factory? 10 times worse. Once, a forge press shook the whole floor like an earthquake, but everything held. Planes are engineered the same way, stress-tested to hell and back." That seemed to ease her, and she let out a small laugh. "All right, expert, tell me more about this mill of yours." I hesitated, not wanting to bore her, but she seemed genuinely interested, so I started talking about my job. The heat from the furnaces that could melt your boots if you weren't careful. The sparks flying like fireworks. The satisfaction of turning raw ore into beams that end up in bridges or buildings across the country. It's dirty work, but there's pride in it. Knowing something I helped make is out there, holding things together. Abigail listened intently, her head tilted slightly. "That sounds grounding. I envy that, the tangibility of it. My world is all sketches and client meetings. I'm an interior designer, mostly high-end homes and offices. It's creative, but the pressure? Endless. Demanding clients who change their minds every other day, deadlines that never budge." As she spoke, I could see the fatigue in her eyes deepen. She paused, then added quietly, "And honestly, it's been rough lately. Just got out of a marriage that, well, let's say it didn't hold together like your steel beams." I didn't pry, but I nodded. "Sorry to hear that. Must be tough." She waved it off with a wry smile. "It is, but life's like that. Felt like losing my foundation. That's why this trip, trying to rebuild, 1 mile at a time." Her words hit me. I knew about foundations crumbling too, even if mine were different. Growing up in a small Ohio town, money tight after my dad left, I'd built my life on hard work. But it often felt like I was just holding on. We kept talking, the conversation flowing easier than I'd expected. I shared about my childhood, dirt roads, fishing in rusty creeks, dreaming of seeing the ocean someday. Never thought I'd actually do it, but here I am. Abigail lit up at that. "I get it. I grew up in a similar place, small town in Kansas, poor as church mice, but we had dreams. My first big one was designing my own room as a kid. Curtains from old sheets, furniture from yard sales. It sparked everything." We laughed when we realized we both loved old country music, the kind with stories about hard times and redemption. "Johnny Cash?" I asked. Absolutely, she replied. That raw honesty, it's like your steelwork, real and unpolished. The flight stretched on, but it didn't feel long. We swapped stories about our first jobs, mine hauling scrap at 16, hers waitressing through design school, and the little victories that kept us going. By the time the captain announced our descent, the turbulence long forgotten, I felt like I'd known her longer than a few hours. There was this unexpected connection, like two pieces from different puzzles that somehow fit. As the wheels touched down in Portland, we gathered our things. Well, safe travels, Mason, she said, standing up. You too, Abigail. Hope you find that new foundation. We shook hands, a brief but warm grip, and went our separate ways at the gate. I watched her wheel her suitcase toward baggage claim, thinking, what are the odds? I didn't ask for her number, didn't want to seem pushy, but as I headed to my rental car, I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths might cross again. Little did I know how right I was. 2 weeks after landing in Portland, I was still riding the high from that flight. Oregon was everything I'd hoped for. Crisp air, towering pines, and the vast Pacific stretching out like an endless blue canvas. I'd rented a cheap motel room near the coast, figuring I'd spend my days exploring. No strict plans, just wandering. One morning, scrolling on my phone over instant coffee, I saw an ad for a fishing tour out of Newport. I'd never been deep-sea fishing, but the idea of being on the water, rod in hand, appealed to me. It reminded me of those rusty creeks back home, but bigger, wilder. I booked a spot on impulse, thinking it was time to try something new. The day of the tour, I showed up at the dock early, dressed in my usual jeans and a windbreaker, a baseball cap pulled low against the morning chill. The boat was a sturdy charter vessel, maybe 40 feet long, with a dozen other tourists milling about. Families, a couple of older guys with fancy gear, and me, the obvious rookie. The captain, a grizzled man named Tom, handed out life vests and gave a quick safety briefing. I climbed aboard, the deck rocking gently under my feet, the salty breeze whipping through. It felt exhilarating, a far cry from the factory's stifling heat. As we pushed off from the dock, I leaned against the railing, watching the coastline fade. The engine rumbled, and seagulls cried overhead. I was chatting with Tom about the best bait when I heard a familiar laugh from the bow. I turned, and there she was, Abigail, helping the first mate rig a line, her hair tied back under a sun hat, wearing shorts and a light jacket. She looked up, and our eyes met. For a second, we both froze, then burst out laughing. "No way," I said, walking over. "Abigail? What are the odds?" She shook her head, grinning wide. "Mason, I thought that was you. Are you stalking me or something?" I held up my hands in mock surrender. "Hey, you were on my flight first. Maybe you're the one following me." We hugged briefly, awkward but warm, and the first mate raised an eyebrow. "Old friends?" he asked. Abigail winked. "Something like that." The tour kicked off as we hit open water, the boat cutting through gentle swells. Tom pointed out seals basking on rocks and explained how to cast for halibut or salmon. Abigail and I ended up side by side at the railing, rods in hand. "Never thought I'd see you again," I admitted, baiting my hook with a chunk of herring. "Me neither," she replied. "But I'm glad. This trip's been solitary so far." We cast our lines, the plunks echoing over the water, and waited for bites. The sun climbed higher, warming the deck, and the group settled into a rhythm of chatter and anticipation. That's when the fun and chaos began. Abigail got her first nibble, yanking the rod too hard. The line tangled around her wrist in a messy knot. "Oh no," she groaned, trying to shake it free. I set my rod down and stepped over. "Here, let me." Our hands brushed as I carefully unwound the monofilament, her skin cool against mine. "Thanks," she said, flexing her fingers. "I'm all thumbs out here." I chuckled. "No problem. Back at the mill, I deal with worse snarls in conveyor belts." We recast, and soon I felt a tug on my line. Excited, I reeled in, too fast, and hooked a seagull mid-dive instead of a fish. The bird squawked wildly, flapping around the deck. Abigail doubled over laughing as I chased it, finally freeing the hook with Tom's help. "Smooth move," she teased, wiping tears from her eyes. "Hey, at least I caught something," I shot back, grinning. The real highlight came an hour later. We both got bites at the same time, strong pulls that bent our rods. Teamwork, Abigail yelled, and we reeled together, the boat rocking with our efforts. Inch by inch, we hauled up a massive halibut, its flat body thrashing on the surface. The group cheered as we got it over the side, but in the excitement, I slipped on the wet deck, stumbling backward. Abigail grabbed my arm to steady me, but her foot caught on a coil of rope, and we both teetered dangerously close to the edge. Tom shouted, "Whoa there!" and pulled us back just in time. We collapsed against the railing, breathless and laughing hysterically, our faces inches apart. "That was close," I panted. "Yeah," she said, her eyes sparkling. "But fun." The halibut? In the commotion, it flopped once more and slipped back into the sea. The other tourists groaned, but we just high-fived. "Next time," I said. As the afternoon wore on, the mishaps bonded us. We shared a sandwich from the cooler, trading stories about our worst failures. Mine a botched weld that shut down the mill line for a day, hers a client who hated her entire redesign after months of work. The age difference, the different worlds we came from, it all faded under the sun and spray. By the time we headed back to shore, the boat golden in the late light, I realized how easy it was being around her. No pretenses, just genuine enjoyment. We docked, and as we gathered our things, Abigail turned to me. "This was the best day of my trip so far." I smiled. "Mine too." We walked off the boat together, the salt drying on our skin, and for the first time, I wondered if this coincidence was more than just luck. The next day dawned brighter, the Oregon coast bathed in a crisp morning light that promised calm seas. I'd signed up for a second outing on the same charter boat, figuring why not extend the adventure? Abigail had mentioned over drinks at a dockside bar the night before that she was game too, said the fishing, or the company, had been more fun than she'd expected. We met at the dock, coffee in hand, exchanging easy smiles like old friends. "Ready for round two?" I asked, handing her a spare hat I'd picked up. "As long as you don't hook another seagull," she teased. The group was smaller this time, just a handful of repeat tourists and us. Tom, the captain, waved us aboard, joking about our dynamic duo status from yesterday. We set out farther from shore, the boat slicing through deeper waters where the swells were bigger, the horizon endless. The air was saltier, the wind sharper, and I felt alive in a way the factory never allowed. Abigail and I claimed spots at the stern, rods ready, chatting about nothing and everything. The best diners we'd hit on our trips, favorite movies from our teens. She opened up a bit more about her design work, describing a recent project where she'd turned a rundown loft into a cozy haven. "It's like giving spaces a second chance," she said. I nodded, thinking how that mirrored my own life, piecing together something solid from the scraps. But as the morning wore on, the sky darkened unexpectedly. What started as gentle rolls turned into choppy waves, the boat pitching more than before. Tom assured us over the intercom it was just a passing squall, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Abigail gripped her rod tighter, her laughter from earlier fading. "This feels different," she muttered, scanning the horizon where gray clouds met the churning sea. I tried to play it cool. "We've got this. Remember, these boats are built like tanks, steel hulls that laugh at storms." But even I felt the adrenaline kick in as the first big wave hit, sending spray over the deck. Then it escalated. A rogue swell slammed the side, tilting the boat sharply. Shouts erupted from the group as gear slid across the wet planks. Abigail, standing to adjust her line, lost her footing on the slick surface. She yelped, arms flailing, and went down hard, her knees scraping against a cleat. Blood bloomed on her jeans almost immediately. Without thinking, I dropped my rod and lunged for her, grabbing her arm just as another wave rocked us. "Hold on!" I yelled over the roar, pulling her toward me and shielding her with my body against the railing. The boat bucked like a wild horse, water crashing over us, soaking through our clothes. I braced my feet, one arm around her waist, the other gripping the rail. "Just breathe, I've got you," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. Tom steered us through, barking orders to secure loose items. But those minutes felt endless, the sea a furious beast testing our limits. Finally, the waves eased as we turned back toward sheltered waters. The squall passed as quickly as it came, leaving the deck a mess of tangled lines and puddles. Abigail was shaking, her face pale, the scrape on her knee raw and bleeding. I helped her to a bench, grabbing a first aid kit from Tom. "Let me see," I said gently, kneeling to clean the wound with antiseptic wipes. She winced, but managed a weak smile. "My hero," she murmured. I bandaged it as best I could, my hands steady from years of patching up mill injuries. The other passengers were rattled but okay, sharing nervous laughs. Tom apologized profusely, but I waved it off. Nature's unpredictable, that's why we come out here. Once we docked, the group dispersed quickly, eager for dry land. Abigail and I lingered on the beach nearby, sitting on a driftwood log as the sun broke through the clouds again. She stared at the calming waves, her hands clasped in her lap. "That scared me more than I want to admit," she said softly. "Not just the storm, the feeling of losing control." I sat beside her, our shoulders brushing. "You were tough out there, but yeah, it's okay to be scared. Doesn't make you weak." She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "You've got this quiet strength, Mason. Like those steel beams you talk about. Unassuming, but unbreakable." I felt a warmth in my chest, but I didn't brush it off. Comes from practice. Factory life's full of close calls. But out here, it's different when it's someone else in danger. We sat in silence for a while, the tide lapping at the shore. Then Abigail spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "After my divorce, I thought I'd never feel safe again. Like I'd always be waiting for the next wave to hit. And age. It makes you wonder if you've missed your shot at something real." Her words hung heavy, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. I took a breath, meeting her gaze. "Age is just a number. Hearts don't count years, they feel what's real. And right now, being here with you, that feels pretty damn real to me." She looked at me, surprise flickering in her eyes, then something softer, like relief. I reached out, hesitating, and took her hand. It was cool from the wind, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed back, her thumb tracing a small circle on my skin. In that moment, the barriers we'd kept up, age, backgrounds, the randomness of it all, crumbled a little. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I didn't move, just let the quiet wrap around us. "You make me want to believe in second chances," she said finally, her voice steady but laced with emotion. I didn't reply right away, but inside I knew this storm had changed things. We weren't just travel acquaintances anymore. Something deeper had surfaced, raw and undeniable. As the sun dipped lower, painting the water gold, I realized I wasn't ready to let her, slip away like that halibut from yesterday. After the storm cleared and we sat on that driftwood log, hand in hand under the breaking clouds, something shifted between us. Abigail looked at me with a mix of gratitude and curiosity, like she'd just rediscovered a part of herself she'd thought lost. "Mason," she said finally, her voice steady. "My trip was supposed to be solo, figuring things out on my own. But after today, would you want to join me for the next leg? No pressure, just company." I didn't hesitate. The factory could wait. This felt like the kind of chance life doesn't offer twice. "I'd like that," I replied. We exchanged numbers right there on the beach, the waves whispering approval as the sun set. A few days later, we met at a rental car lot in Portland. I'd extended my stay, packing light, just my backpack and a sense of adventure. Abigail had a mid-size SUV waiting, loaded with maps, snacks, and a playlist of old country tunes. "Hop in," she said, tossing me the keys with a grin. "You're the steel guy. Handle the wheel like one of your machines." We hit the road south, no rigid itinerary, just a loose plan to cut through the Pacific Northwest, dip into California, then east toward the Rockies. The first stretch along Highway 101 was breathtaking, cliffs dropping to crashing surf, fog rolling in like smoke from a forge. We stopped at overlooks, snapping photos, but mostly just talking. "This is freedom," I said as we pulled over at a viewpoint, the ocean roaring below. Abigail nodded. "Yeah, no deadlines, no expectations." Our days blurred into a rhythm of discovery. We'd drive for hours, windows down, Johnny Cash or Patsy Cline filling the cab. At a roadside diner in Northern California, we shared greasy burgers and fries, laughing about our fishing fiascos. "You saved me out there," she said, dipping a fry in ketchup. "Not just from the wave, from feeling alone in it all." I shrugged it off, but her words stuck. Stops became highlights. A hike in Redwood National Park, where the massive trees made me feel small in the best way. A sunset picnic on a bluff near Big Sur, the sky exploding in oranges and pinks. We didn't label what we were, friends? More? But the touches grew natural. Her hand on my shoulder during a bumpy road, my arm around her at a chilly viewpoint. One evening in Utah, after crossing into the desert, we pulled off near Arches National Park. The red rock formations glowed under the fading light, like forged iron fresh from the heat. We hiked a short trail to a viewpoint, the air dry and warm. As we sat on a boulder, watching the sun dip behind the arches, Abigail turned to me. "What do you think we're doing here, Mason? Us?" Her question hung in the still air, honest and unguarded. I looked at her, the golden light catching her features, making her look timeless. "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "But it feels right. Like two pieces that fit, even if they're from different sets." She smiled, but there was vulnerability in it. "I've been scared to let anyone in again. After the divorce, I thought that part of me was done. Age creeps up, makes you question if you're worth the risk." I took her hand then, lacing our fingers. "Age? That's just time. And time hasn't dimmed you, it's made you stronger. Me? I'm just a guy from Ohio who welds steel for a living. But being with you? It makes me want to build something real, not just hold things together." She squeezed my hand, her eyes glistening. "You do that already. You make me laugh, make me feel seen. I thought I was done with second chances, but you make me want to try." We sat there as stars began to prick the sky, the desert cooling around us. That night, in a motel room with creaky beds and a flickering neon sign outside, we held each other close. No rush, no promises, just the quiet assurance of being present. We agreed that night. No grand vows, no mapping out forever. "Just today," I said, tracing her arm in the dark. "And tomorrow, if it feels right." She nodded against my chest. "Deal." The road ahead unfolded like that, through Nevada's vast basins, stopping at quirky roadside attractions like an old mining town where we panned for fool's gold, laughing when we found nothing but rocks. In Arizona, we detoured to the Grand Canyon at dawn, standing at the rim as the sun rose, painting the chasm in fire. "This is what life's about," Abigail whispered. "Moments like this." I pulled her close. "With you, yeah." Our journey wasn't all smooth. Flat tires on dusty back roads, arguments over directions that ended in shared apologies and kisses. But through it, we grew closer, shedding layers of doubt. Abigail opened up about her fears of starting over. I shared my own insecurities about being just a mill worker. "You're more than that," she said one night under Nevada stars. "You're solid, like your steel." And I believed her. As the trip wound down, crossing back into familiar Midwest territory, we didn't talk about endings. Instead, we focused on the now. The feel of her hand in mine as we drove through the night, stars wheeling overhead like sparks from a welder's torch. I didn't know what the future held. Back to the mill for me, her designs waiting. But I'd found something precious, a connection that made my heart steady and hers at peace. In that endless American night, with the road humming beneath us, I knew we'd figure it out. One day, 1 mile at a time.